Iran has been on the diplomatic offensive over the past week in trying to release 48 Iranian citizens that were recently abducted in Damascus. The diplomatic outreach likely has a lot more to do with Iran seeking out a broader negotiation to protect its regional interests than simply the fate of these Iranian citizens. On August 4th, 48 Iranian citizens were abducted in Damascus by a faction of the Free Syrian Army. The identity of the Iranians has been a bit of a mystery. Iran claimed from the start that the kidnapped victims were all Iranian religious pilgrims who were on their way to a mosque when they were abducted. Stratfor received indications that several within that group of Iranian citizens were actually members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, who were traveling undercover and were sent to reinforce Syrian troops. Iran even adjusted its story August 8th when the Iranian foreign minister admitted that some of the kidnapped Iranians were former IRGC members and army soldiers. Iran's foreign ministry has issued a statement holding the US, Turkey, and Qatar responsible for the lives of these Iranian citizens, and has appealed to the UN to help secure their release. Meanwhile, Iran's two top diplomats have been very busy the past week in trying to shore up Iran's regional position. The Secretary General of Iran's Supreme National Security Council traveled this week to Beirut, Damascus, and is today in Baghdad. These three cities form the arc of Iranian influence across the region, and Jalili's assignment was likely focused on reaffirming Iran's presence from Mesopotamia to the Levant, in spite of what's happening in Syria. The Iranian foreign minister was in Turkey earlier this week to negotiate a resolution on Syria. And in another big diplomatic move, the Iranian president accepted an invitation from the Saudi monarch to attend an emergency OIC meeting on Syria in Mecca. Iran's diplomatic frenzy exposes the Islamic Republic's growing vulnerabilities in the region. There's no question that Iran's worried about the trajectory of the Syrian crisis and the potential loss of its Levantine foothold. The US, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar are clearly stacked up against Iran in this regional competition. Iran doesn't want to encounter a situation down the line in which spillover from Syria threatens Iran's far more critical position in Iraq, as players throughout the region shift from respecting Iran's wishes to disregarding or outright challenging them. Already, Iran is starting to feel its authority in the region undermined. Instead of demonstrating a common view with Iran, Iraq's Sunni parliament speaker instead called for balance between Turkey and Iran and pointed out, without elaborating, that he and Jalili had an important disagreement on Syria. Another big test of Iran's influence will come August 9th, when Iran is expected to hold an international summit on Syria. Lebanon has already said that they won't send a representative. The Syrian president reportedly won't be able to attend, and Russia's ambassador to Iran said he would attend, but at the same time expressed doubt that the summit would even take place. There's much more at stake for Iran than the fate of these 48 kidnapped Iranian citizens. Now is the time for Iran to try and angle its way into a broader negotiation with the US, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia to try and retain influence in Syria and hold its position in Iraq. But will the regional stakeholders entertain an Iranian offer for a truce? Iran would have to convince these states that an Iran-backed insurgency spreading through the Levant is inevitable and not worth the cost. But it's not certain Iran can prove that without alienating itself even more. It's also not clear that these states will have the foresight to compel them to negotiate with Iran when they've already come this far in the Syrian campaign.